Hello, in today's video we are going to talk about Evolution Golf Cart audio upgrades. This is the part 1 to the series, and in today's video we are going to design and build plug-and-play harnesses for the Evolution Cart D5. My cart is a pre-CarPlay, so it's a non-plus version of the Evolution Cart. However, the things we cover in this video may be applicable to other model years as well as even golf carts in general. So I'm going to walk you through a very specific video for how to build one for the Evolution Cart D5, but things may be universally applicable. Now, the goal with this stage of audio upgrade video is what we're trying to do was build some plug-and-play wiring with a factory look. We want to improve the audio quality and specifically around Bluetooth. When I use my cart, I don't use the radio. I don't use a USB drive or a key with MP3 files on it. I'm always using my phone, and I would stream Spotify. You can do anything you want through your phone these days. So fundamentally, we want improved audio quality on Bluetooth was the goal. We want our stereo to be more powerful, 2 to 3 times more powerful. I wanted steering wheel mounted controls because reaching for the volume is often kind of hard in these carts. The seatbelts lock all the time and it's tough to get there. And as you're going fast and slow, you kind of want to increase and decrease your volume quite frequently. I wanted to build it using readily available parts that I could get next day, pretty much, right to my door. And I wanted to be able to play music in reverse. This actually wasn't my request, but I see it in forums on Reddit and Facebook. Everyone wants their cart to play music while they're in reverse. I'm not really sure why specifically. Maybe when you're driving around town, backing into parking spaces, you find it ruins your vibe, but this is something a lot of people are always asking for. And we also want to make sure that it's compatible with future upgrades. I'm going to do another video where I add accessories, and we don't want this base work to be for nothing. And the whole budget is $250, and we have about 1 hour of install time that somebody can do with generally average tools in their garage. So this was the goals for the stage 1 build, and we're going to divide it into 2 videos. This video, we're going to talk about the harnesses and build our harnesses. And in the next video, we will do the actual install. Okay, so when you're talking about golf carts, they work a little bit differently if you're used to working on car audio or potentially boat audio, where you have 12 volt to run your audio systems natively. In our golf cart, we don't have a native 12 volt system. That big battery underneath your seat is a 48 volt battery. And what happens is the ignition box will, when you hit that start button, and only when you hit that start button, will it start to send voltage to our, it's a DC to DC converter. And what this is doing is reducing our voltage from 48 to 12 volts. So all of our accessories on the cart run through this DC to DC voltage reducer, which is located near the controller. You'll see it in a silver box with the fins. There is no constant 12 volt on the cart. So the only time we get 12 volts is when you hit the start button and the ignition turns on, is when power is fed into this box and is fed to our accessories. All of the accessories are running on this voltage reducer. So they're running across it. All right. Now, one thing to talk about here is, before we move on, is this voltage reducer has a 240 watt max. It's listed at 20 amp peak. And so we need to work within this 20 amp capacity. You are not going to be able to, without changing your power setup, run a 1000 watt amplifier and a huge bass and huge subs. And so one of the constraints for this level 1 build that we're doing right here, the stage 1 build, was I wanted to be able to simplify things and just keep the power running within the capacity of our existing DC voltage reducer. So we have to fit our headlights, our existing dash, the existing soundbar, and whatever else we add within this 20 amp limit. So that was the goal. In future stages, if you want to install a crazy stereo what some of the options that we've seen online is you may add an additional DC to DC converter. So sometimes a cheaper buck converter like this might get you an additional 30 amps. So you could grab something like this online, wire it directly to the battery, and that would give you 30 amps dedicated for your stereo system. It would also give you a constant DC. Now it's going to draw a little bit from the battery if you put it on the other side of the ignition, even while your cart is off. However, it would give you that constant 12 volt that sometimes you're after in a head unit. And then you would simply tap in as the ignition signal to your amplifier to trigger it on and off using the existing 12 volt here. So that is one option if you're gonna go with a crazier stereo system. The other is some people will install a dedicated 12 volt battery specifically for their stereo. The other thing you have to do there then is keep in mind, okay, now I need to keep this charged. You need to have a charging system for when you bring it home and you charge it up. But that is another option. So both of these options we are not going to do in this build, but I just wanted to say that they're here, and those are things that if you're installing a crazy stereo, that you probably would need to go down one of these options. All right, so let's talk about our plug and play harness. There are a lot of audio harnesses available out there. Some work well and some have mixed reviews. I've seen people buy all the special and correct audio harnesses for their Evolution cart, and they say when they plug it all in, it still has a lot of noise on the sound bar. And so when I looked at things, I wanted to kind of start from scratch, look at the wiring diagram on these Evolution carts, test a bunch of things and figure out how can we best create an audio harness and where should we tap into the cart. So underneath the glove box, there is the touchscreen connectors here at the top. And this is where many audio harnesses that you might buy tap in. The issue with up here is if I had to say which is better, your soundbar or the touchscreen, the soundbar has better capability for producing quality audio than the touchscreen does. So we'll talk about this later on, but the reason the touchscreen provides, in my opinion, such bad audio quality is because it is on the same leads as our headlights. And the headlights are a LED headlight, which uses pulse width modulation, and it chops up the current. And that is interfering with the audio signal that is coming out of this head unit. So we can spend a lot of money on our stereo, but we're feeding it with very noisy audio coming from these signals up here. The main other thing that we're gonna need is a good source of our 12 volt power. And so we're gonna wanna, instead of tapping in up here where these leads are tiny and noisy, the wiring gauge is really small, we are gonna wanna tap in for our power all the way back to the DC converter, where the gauge coming out of the back of the DC converter is more substantial than any of the other Evolution cart wiring harnesses. So no matter where else we tap in, the gauge of the wires is, in my opinion, too small. So we wanna go all the way back to the source for our power. The other spot that there's audio is on the soundbar connector. And this soundbar connector, in my opinion, is a better spot to tap into our audio. And we'll talk about why in a second here. Okay, so under the dash, you will see these extremely cheap connectors. I dislike these connectors a lot. They're 2.8 millimeter general wire connectors. They're non-waterproof, non-isolated. And fundamentally, I think these connectors alone are a lot of the reason for the stereo noise. So if we're gonna build a plug and play harness by duplicating these connectors, we are adding even more of them. We're doubling up the non-waterproof connectors underneath the dash that already contain bad sound quality. And my goal was to avoid tapping into these in whatever capacity we can. So I don't want to add more of this low quality wiring. Now, at the base of the roof beam underneath the Evolution cart, you will notice that there is a much nicer 9-pin waterproof connector that goes up to the soundbar. This is a much better spot, in my opinion, to tap into audio signal. It also is closer to the controller and likely where you may want to keep your amplifier. If you have to decide between having long speaker runs or a long power run, it's better to have long speaker runs and keep your power run as short as possible. So fundamentally, what we're going to want to do with our audio is pump it in here a lot closer to the soundbar and away from all of that noise that's being created by the head unit and the headlights. So to do this, it's actually really quite easy. We can buy these 9-pin waterproof connectors, really nice connectors on Amazon. There's a 3-pack for $12. And this is going to be one of the key pieces that you will need to order. Use the exact link in my description. Don't try to switch from a 3-pack to another pack. I did that and it switched it to a 6-pin connector and I didn't notice. So make sure you're getting a 9-pin connector. Use this exact link on Amazon to grab it. And this will be our core go-to to make a super easy plug and play audio connector on the way up to the soundbar is where we're going to build our connector. So the other thing we will need is some RCA speaker wires. So I'm going to order 2 of these, and what these will do is allow us to tap into that low-level audio so we can send new audio to our soundbar and also capture the audio for our amplifier on the line in coming out of the head unit. Just in case, I am not primarily going to use the unit, the audio coming out of the head unit, but we are able to at least use it on our amplifier as an aux line in case there is radio or something that you really wanted to use as part of your design. So you will get 2 of these. Now, this is what the wiring is going to look like. We're going to build it together in the video here in a second. But fundamentally, this soundbar wiring diagram, if you buy the exact same connectors, you'll have the same color coding as us. The purple wire is a good way to help orientate everything. If the clip is on the top, purple wire is on the bottom, and on the Evolution cart harness, this wire is not actually used. On the left-hand side, when looking at it from the back, you will have your left speaker positive as blue, right as green, and the left and right share a ground. This 12 volt and ground is going up to the soundbar to power it. So those are potentially a power source, but I wanted to get our power all the way back at the converter. If you really wanted to, you could potentially save making yourself 2 harnesses and tap into this power. However, in my opinion, I'd like to decouple it just for future upgrades and depending on how big your amplifier is. On the right-hand side, we have RS485 serial. So these are going up to the soundbar and they communicate signals from your head unit. That is, what color is your LEDs currently set to and your volume control. Because what we're sending up to the head unit is non-amplified audio. The soundbar. So what we're sending to the soundbar on these lines is non-amplified audio. And these use it to tell the amplifier which is built into the soundbar, what volume to set at and what colors to use. All right, so let's jump into building that now. Over on the workbench, once your parts arrive, you should get something that looks a little bit like this. These are our 9-pin wire connectors, really nice connectors, waterproof. They come pre-wired with the leads, all color-coded. Really great starting point for our audio harness. And then these are our 2 recoil RCA leads that we will use to be able to let us plug into our amplifier and plug directly into the soundbar. Now, I'll give you links to everything that I'm using here in the video for building this. So if you want to have the exact same stuff that I have, you can click on those links to get it. But much of this you may already have. You just need some wire cutters, some scissors. I use these solderless wire connectors and they work really great. You'll see why. Some shrink tubing, a big kit of shrink tubing. And this is a heat gun. It's really inexpensive as well. It has a little tip that plugs onto the end for when you're doing wire. It's nice because it's hands-free, and if you want those, I'll give you the links to them on Amazon as well. We also have some loom tape, and I have some other loom. I'll give you links to them down in the description. Also, a label maker or even just a pen and paper are handy if you want to, label the leads as they're coming out, which side is in, which side is out. You can do something like that. All right, let's get started. All right, once you crack the package open, you're gonna be looking for one of each side. So you're gonna want two ends that do plug together that give you a set. And again, you can see how nice these connectors are compared to the other connectors. All the wires, when they're clipped in, it's nice and waterproof, has a nice secure clip. And this is the type of connector that I don't mind adding to the cart, whereas those other ones are, in my opinion, just horrible. So we got a nice solid connector. It's gonna clip in beautifully into our soundbar port, and this is gonna let us tap into our audio. So what we're gonna do here is many of these wires will end up just being straight pass-through. So I'm gonna prep that and I'll show you what it looks like. So what I've done here is I've just separated the green, blue, and white wire and pointed them up and let all the others go down. The green, blue, and white wire will be our speaker wires, while as the remainder will mostly just be a direct pass-through. Now on our speaker wires, the wires with the white and gray with the line on it get wired together and they go to the white. To prep, I'm putting some heat shrink tube on here in advance because it's hard to do afterwards. And then we're grabbing our various little heat shrink solderless connectors where you're going to put that solder right in the middle of the wire. Then all you really need to do is heat it up until it's all nice and melted, slide the heat shrink tube over, and seal it all in there together. So after completing one side of the audio harness, we are going to just copy the exact same process and do it to the other side. Okay, so we got the basics ready here. We have audio coming out of the left, audio coming out of the right, and those are spliced into. The rest of this is generally going to be a pass-through. The black, red, and yellow is the data communication. In the future, we might put a Arduino or an ESP32 in here that would let us also control or potentially listen to the settings done by the head unit of what color your LEDs are or your volume. And then we could use an IR module on the ESP32 to change other LED colors. So in the future, we may build something intelligent inside here. Down here, you have the 12-volt power. So this is the 12-volt power that's passing through up to the soundbar. Now, if you did want to attach a lead here, you could build your own little lead that taps into the power. You could add a line to the orange one that acts as a trigger for your amplifier, which might be a good opportunity if you're going to do an external power source. So I may add a simple lead just so I'm future-proofed. All right, and like that, we are pretty much done. We have a accessory line to go to the amplifier trigger if we need one in the future. We have the pass-through of the data. We have the pass-through of the voltage that goes to the soundbar, and we have our two audio lines. Now, the one side that is a little bit bigger, that goes over top of the other, this will feed up to the amplifier. So I'm just going to make a little label for this pair here that says, to the soundbar. So this is going to go up to the soundbar. So from this side, we're going to label to soundbar, and this side is going to be audio in. So this is audio in coming from the cart's head unit. So this will be audio in, and this will be aux out to the soundbar. So I'm going to make two little labels, wrap it up, and then we're done. Okay, so we have our accessory signal wire labeled. We have aux out and aux in for our amplifier. Now I'm just going to use some heat resistant. This is some electrical automotive wiring tape, which is designed for this to bundle it all up and potentially add a little bit of split loom in a couple spots to just strengthen it and make it look factory once it's plugged in. And then we will test it out. Okay, all bundled up. We are ready to give it a try. The first thing to test is we're just going to add these, one of these adapters into the RCAs and connect them to each other. And then we will plug it into the cart. So on the Evolution Cart D5, on your soundbar, so the soundbar wiring, there's a clip here at the top that comes down And if you lift up the rubber grommet, you should be able to pull out your factory harness, and we will plug ours in right there. Okay, so we got our adapter plugged in. These RCAs are plugged into each other, simulating just a straight pass-through. So we just want to check to make sure everything works like it used to. So we're going to turn the card on. I hear a little bit of hum from the soundbar, which is normal. The Evolution Cart logo should finish and send it our colors and volume. And when it does that, the light will turn blue. So it's getting data, it's getting power, so that all looks good. Let's just turn the radio on for a second. I know the radio is not very good. Okay, and so we are hearing radio. That means the audio is coming through the cables and everything looks good. So, nice. Okay, the last thing we want to do is a quick test to make sure that our soundbar can play audio that's not coming from the head unit anymore. And so this is going to be what we use in our amplifier bypass to get cleaner sound heading up to the soundbar to act as our rear speakers. So what I got going on here is I just have been using on YouTube these stereo sound checks, help you make sure left is right, right is left, things like that. I have an aux cable that's plugged into my laptop, and this goes to the RCAs, and this is going to aux out. So this is going to simulate us passing non-amplified sound from our amplifier into the soundbar. So if I hit play on this audio track here, we should hear audio. So we have audio that's coming from our soundbar now, which has nothing to do with the head unit. So the head unit is not involved in this audio in any way. The audio is bypassing it and it's going up. What we can still do though is use our volume up and volume down to increase and decrease the volume. So this will increase and decrease the volume on the soundbar. I'm just gonna go up and down. So we're gonna be able to use the volume buttons to independently control our existing stock soundbar. But you can already tell the audio quality is a little bit better because we're skipping all of the bad head unit wiring, and we're really just tapping in right here and going directly to the soundbar. So if you pass all of those tests, that means everything is working. Our new audio harness is good to go, and we are ready to move on to the next step. Okay, the next plug and play harness we're going to build is all focused on power. That's getting the most 12 volt power that we can get in a reliable and safe way out of the back of the voltage converter. So what you're going to need to order is these 6.3 millimeter 2-pin wire connectors. They will let us plug into the back of that voltage reducer seamlessly without splicing into any hardware or any wires. So you're going to order these and you're going to get 10 pair. You'll have some extras, but that's okay. They're really handy to have around. The other thing I did is I ordered a collection of these waterproof 2-pin 16 gauge connectors. Now the 16 gauge is what we want to use, a thicker wire that we want to use in this adapter to make sure that we don't have any pinch points when it comes to amperage flow, so we can get a good amount for our amplifier. We may also use these for speaker wires. It'll be easy to plug and play, clip in and clip out our various speakers. So getting a pack of these for $12.99 is also important for the build on this specialized harness. For power and speakers, I bought this kit, which is great. These are some really waterproof. They have a nice, at least a 14 gauge wire on it. And this is what I want to use for our power to the amplifier, as well as speaker leads, so I can clip them in and clip them out. So you get a nice kit of these, comes with some shrink wrap. Use the exact link to grab them because they are great. We have another video which talks about in detail how to build a plug and play power harness to go into the back of the inverter. This side will go into your inverter and this side will come back out so we can make a plug and play version. What I want to do in this version though is I want to make sure we don't create a choke point of a small gauge wire.
this wire is a little small to run, 10 amps off of. So what we're going to want to do is pull our pins out and be able to get this, our new adapter, right back to the metal connector. So I'm just going to pull the pins out of here. I'm going to splice the new wire into it, and then I'm going to connect these two together for a pass-through. And this will be a really nice pigtail that we can plug into the back of our Evolution cart DC to DC converter, and it will be able to carry a nice high load down to our amplifier. Okay, so to unpin these, they are pretty straightforward. You'll just need a little pick, and what we're going to do is look in the front and just kind of lift up on the bottom, and it should pull right out. So here is one, and we're just going to, when you look in, you're going to push on the underside here, so underneath the clip, just lift and then pull back. What you're lifting is this tiny little clip right here. You're just trying to push that down by going underneath it, and they will both pull out. Now remember, the power is always on the top, so closest to the clip, so the power wire will be up here on the top. So in a perfect world, you would probably have some extra of these spade connectors and just wire a fresh one onto the back of your thicker gauged wire. Sadly, I don't have these with me, and you may not either. So what I'm gonna do is just pry the connector off the back of this. Generally what I can do is just use your pliers to pull open the first one that is connected to, generally it would clamp onto the sleeve. And then what I will usually do is just use a small set of side cutters to cut it off. All right. And then I can reuse this one with our thicker gauge wiring. What is also a handy tip is you take your tubing like this, find one that will fit over the base of your spade connector, and then some scissors, and we just cut this like this. I'm going to take the side that we cut off and slide it over. We will use the side cutters to re-clamp the part that is typically on your loom like this. Okay. And then we will slide over the loom, and we will heat shrink this down like that. And what that's going to do is seal the solder across the spade. And now we have our 16 gauge wire going right to the metal of the spade connector. And so this is going to ensure we have a good ability to carry the amperage across to our amplifier. So I'm going to do that there, and then we will splice in the original wire just a little bit lower on the connector. And this is our almost completed pigtail for power. We have nice 16 gauge wire coming directly out of the inverter. This is going to be our 16 gauge pass through to the amplifier, and then we're able to put back on the other end, which would be the factory style end, with similar wire gauge to what the factory accessories use. So we're just going to seal those up, and then we'll be done. Okay, and like that, we have a much nicer 14 gauge pass through coming out of the voltage reducer. We have nice 14 gauge ready to flow through to our amplifier. We'll build another cable that runs down to our amplifier to be easy to plug in. And then this will go to our existing accessories. It's okay that this is a smaller gauge because the factory harness uses the smaller gauge. So instead of building your pigtail out of all smaller gauge wires, what we've done here is used the thicker wire from the waterproof adapters to build a more powerful accessory driven 12 volt system that we will use for our amplifier. Okay, so now that all the hard and complicated stuff is out of the way, we have a plug and play audio harness for the amplifier. We have plug and play harness for power. What are we going to put into the cart in a stage 1 install? So the first thing we need is some speakers. I decided to go with these Kicker KM4s. They're a marine grade speaker.
So that means they're waterproof, and they can be installed in a way where there's kind of an open enclosure, meaning it doesn't need to be fully sealed. These will fit perfectly into the front holes on the Evolution cart, being only a 4-inch size speaker. They also have to be relatively shallow so that they don't run into the bottom of the wheel well. One pair of these is about 120 bucks on Amazon, which I felt was a good balance of quality, name brand, and price for something like this to keep it in a reasonable budget. The next thing I wanted to do is I am not 100% sure whether this is going to be the best choice or not, but it is what I chose to try out. And it is, again, marine grade, so it can be a little bit wet if it ends up getting a little bit wet. But it is a Bluetooth capable amplifier. And so the main reason I wanted to go with one of these was we want to get away from using the head unit to route our audio. So this was a bit of a proof of concept, and I will report back as to whether it stands up or how it actually works out in the long run. And at only 59 bucks, it wasn't that big of a risk to give it a try. We don't have a ton of power to play with anyways, so it's not like going too extreme would make that much of a difference because we only have about 10 amps of power to play with. So when we look at how things work today, typically I pair my phone to the head unit. So I'm pairing my phone via Bluetooth to the head unit, and this head unit is essentially sending signal line out like a low level audio to the soundbar. The soundbar has an amplifier in it, and it's amplifying and playing. Our goal with this install is that we want to avoid all of this noise that's happening over here on this part of the harness. And so once we get our Bluetooth capable amplifier installed potentially under the seat, instead of pairing to the head unit, we're going to tell our phone to forget the Evolution cart head unit and never pair to it again. We are going to pair to our Bluetooth amplifier instead. So this means that my phone will now talk to the Bluetooth amplifier, where we have this nice clean line out that we're going to pass up to the soundbar to use as our rear speakers. So we will pass up our unamplified rear sound to the speakers. And then we will use the amplified front sound coming out into our kicker speakers, which will be in the footwell of the Evolution cart. This is going to surround us a little bit more with sound. We'll have front and rear. We can use the control for the audio to control the front, and we can still use the volume buttons on the soundbar to control the rear. And this will help us kind of create that balance between front and rear so that the soundbar is not overwhelming. The other potential benefit is we're really only using 2 channels of a 4-channel amplifier. So if you do have the Plus model, which has speakers underneath the seat, you could potentially use the amplifier to power those under-seat speakers as well. And then our very last thing that we are going to add in our build of the Stage 1 build is a Bluetooth media controller. These recoil Bluetooth media buttons are really quite cool. They're $27 and they would pair to your phone. So you essentially would pair this once to your phone and it would remember your phone. And then from then on, it has no wires. It's able to skip, pause, do volume up, do volume down, and things like that for us. We are combining it with a 3D printed steering wheel holder that fits right in it. You will pull out your stock steering wheel piece of plastic on the right-hand side, and the controller fits right in there and looks factory. So that's something else that we should have coming out shortly on the site. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter on the site, go to hillvalleylabs.com and put in your email, and we will send out a notification soon when the site opens up with a collection of cool products. All right, that is everything for today's video. I hope that this is helpful to those of you. I see a lot of questions from different people trying to do things with their audio system, and so I wanted to share some of the thought that I put into mine. Stay tuned and subscribe for our next video, which should be out in a couple of days. And in that one, we will unbox the amplifier and our new speakers, plug them all in, hook them up, do a sound test, measure the new decibels versus the stock, connect the Bluetooth, and show you how everything works. So hopefully we'll see you then in the next video.